Cool.
Oh, sensational.
Bloody
Hello, everyone.
marvellous.
Bloody marvellous. That's very posh thing to say that.
Yes.
All right. Welcome to our second AIT Online.
Woohoo! We came back.
We did. We enjoyed it. We actually did genuinely enjoy it. If you didn't see the first one, the goal of these is basically me and Mark are going to explore a tool or a library for about an hour, try and get it to work some magic. And teach ourselves new tools as we do it, but hopefully also share some, insight and create some things that you can watch back yourselves later. But I mentioned Mark. Who is Mark?
Who is Mark? I is Mark. Yes, I am of the two of us the one who is always right when it comes to coding languages. So whenever Richard says that JavaScript is evil, he is wrong, and I am right. That is all that you need to remember. But yes, I am one half of automationintesting.com and the creator of the app that we're going to test. You've put me on the spot. I don't really know who am I?
I think we need to go back to what you said there about JavaScript, right? Because he's preempting. He's trying to cover himself because we're going to play around with React testing library. Well, anyway, before we do that, I'm Richard, also known as Friendly Tester on various social media channels, and the boss at Ministry of Testing. And I'm not a huge fan of JavaScript. I'm just going to put that out there now. It hurts my head. I spent a weekend learning promises and then spent 2 weeks recovering from that weekend. But we're going to explore React testing library, which I believe is many people have contributed, but Kent C. Dodds is the lead owner of this project, if I'm correct.
Yeah, so this was my choice. I guess,
Course it was.
of course it was. Yes. I guess Richard, you can choose the next one for our next stream. You'll probably do
We're going to use
something.
Dart.
I was going to
We're going to
say,
use Flutter, and we're going to build an app in Dart.
brilliant. Yeah, great. Bring it on. But yeah, I came across I've done quite a bit of React testing in Jest, and I follow Kent on Twitter and a few other sort of JavaScript-y people in the sort of React space, and I saw a lot of talk about React testing library, and I thought it looked interesting. So I thought this would be a good opportunity for us to not only explore React testing library, but see if we can maybe get a couple of working tests with restful-booker-platform, which you can find here at automationintesting.online. So this is our little practice app that we created, that we use for our training. But we're going to use this today to, we want to try and use React testing library against it. So we'll probably start with some basic stuff, get it installed, see if we can get a basic test running, maybe off the examples. Then I'm thinking like work with a basic component from React, from restful-booker-platform. And then if that works, we can maybe do a few more interesting things after that.
Sounds good. Yeah, if you're not aware of restful-booker-platform, as Mark said, it's a test playground that we've built. It's got APIs in the back end. They're all written in Java. The front end's written in React. Obviously, it's going to help us with a React testing library if we've got a React product. And it's all wrapped up and deployable in Docker and Kubernetes. So it's there. It's open source, and you can happily play around with it. And there's also an instance running online.
Yeah.
Right, where do we start, Mark? I'm guessing we start here.
Yeah.
On the actual project.
Yeah.
Oh, one more thing, by the way, for the people who haven't watched. We're going to pair. We're going to pair remotely. So as you can see,
Hello.
I have full control of Mark's computer. So maybe we'll switch who has control and who doesn't. But yeah, we're both working on the same machine.
Yeah, which is cool. So I thought the best port of call would be to look at the GitHub repo and check the README, which looks pretty robust. I don't think
props on the README.
Props for the README. I don't think I've ever seen this say 100% coverage on a test tool before as well, which is quite exciting.
Clearly
Yeah,
very used. Nearly 300,000 downloads a month. Like that's pretty impressive. So I
yeah.
think this is a good tool for us to have in our tool belt, which we talk about a lot. The more tools I'm aware of, the more options I have when I join new contexts. And this will be a good one to at least know that I can do a hello world, even if it is JavaScript and it hurts me.
So you want to
All
write
right.
maintainable tests for your React components. As part of this goal, you want your tests to avoid including implementation details of your components and rather focus on making your tests give you the other confidence for which they're intended. Yep, that's definitely a challenge that I've been facing with the stuff that I've got. I like the fact that there's a guiding principle as well. I don't really know very many tools that have guiding principles behind them. So the more your tests resemble the way your software is used, the more confidence they can give you. Yeah, cool. All right. Well, I guess the first things
So you know
first.
that hello world. Well, perhaps have a look at that example first. Like, can you walk me through that? Because I get most of, or I can try and walk through it and see where I stumble. Because I'm not, my JavaScript isn't so good.
Yeah. So starting off. So the import React is pretty straightforward because we need React to work with it. Then we're importing obviously some libraries from testing library, React testing library. I don't know what this jest DOM extend expect is, but I'm sure we'll find out
Hopefully
about
find
that.
out.
The Axios mock is so I've sort of read a little bit about it, but it's essentially a way of mocking APIs, I believe. And then this is, I
So
think,
you mentioned before it's a bit like YMOC to me. So
yeah,
obviously I'm
it's a little bit
familiar
like
with
why.
in the Java world. I'm familiar with YMOC, so it's just a JavaScript mocking tool.
Yeah, yeah. So we just
Cool.
basically get dumb HTTP requests or responses back. And then importing fetch from some folder fetch. Um, I think that's so. In the past, when I've had problems where I've tested components that use fetch, they throw it. So fetch is a library that exists within the browser, but if you're unit testing a component that's not actually loaded into a browser, fetch doesn't exist. So you have to import fetch as a library in so that you don't get like an undefined error.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, which threw
Oh, you
me.
mean that really helpful JavaScript error?
Yeah,
Undefined. Yeah.
undefined. Yeah.
Yeah, you keep defending it. Keep doing
It's just null pointer exception.
it.
Yeah, looking at the arrange, that kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, I see. So, fetch. So so it's not fetch as in, that's a little confusing. So it's not, or at least I don't think it's the fetch library that's used in the browser, but it's actually a React component called fetch.
So I
Um,
think I noticed that at the top. He's saying it's tests for fetch.js. So is that something that they've
yeah.
built, or is it genuine the actual fetch library, which seems a bit
No,
crazy
that
to me?
doesn't seem right to me. But where is it?
Examples, I guess.
Oh, that's where I was looking. Examples, React hooks, Jest config. So I guess Jest is still being used to run the tests. Hmm.
Oh well, we'll keep reading through it.
Yeah,
I was just curious, like, to
yeah.
see what was going on in this test.
Well, yeah.
Um,
The rest it
we're
starts to.
basically building a mock.
Yeah. So this builds the mock. This builds the React component that we're going to test. I believe the render function probably renders that into a DOM to do something with. We can fire event, so we can click something. So get by
Yep,
text, so that feels very much like a selector.
yep.
Wait for an element to appear, and then a bunch of assertions. So yeah, it's interesting. It's actually quite. It's So these get by test IDs and stuff. They're reminiscent of selectors that you would use in tools like Selenium.
Yeah.
The
All
last
right
thing as
then.
well is quite cool actually is that in the example he's doing expects for the Axios mock to say I've been called in the right way, which is a cool use of a codified Oracle. Anyway, yes, let's start with installing. So I'm in, where am I? I changed the folder recently. So cd assets, cd js. Cool. Okay, so installing.
While you're installing that, how did you find building the React app? Because obviously this is all based around React, and its popularity seems to be ever increasing. How did you find it? We were in your developer hat as opposed to your tester hat.
Well, the actual React stuff, like working with React, I think once you've got used to the pattern, it's actually quite easy to work with, and I find it highly testable and and like rapid to work with. Um, and the same really actually with the tests. I guess the trickiest part is, like, if we go back to that example, is things like awaiting elements, because waiting for stuff in JavaScript can be quite tricky at times. So that's quite interesting, that it actually looks quite clean to wait for an element. But the challenge is Webpack. I use Webpack to squish all of the React up and stick it into a JavaScript file that gets served as part of the tool. And that was a real challenge, getting that all set up correctly. And I think 75% of the problems I tend to have with JavaScript tends to be around Webpack not packing things up correctly, or saying things like, I can't find this, I can't find that. So that fetch example I was giving earlier, that was caused by Webpack not being able to find something.
Interesting. All
Yeah,
right then.
right.
So you've installed it, and that was a simple case of npm in the obviously being in the JavaScript world.
Yep.
If you've never
So
tinkered with JavaScript and you're familiar with other languages, think like NuGet in the world of .NET, Maven in the world of Java. It's basically npm is a package manager for Node.
yep. So I can see in the package JSON file it's been added. So let's create a new test in here. So I'm not going to go into detail. So, but basically, because Jest is the runner, for the test runner, that's using that demonstration in that example, I believe. I'm going to do the same thing with our tests in RESTful Booker, because we use Jest.
Okay.
So I'm not going to go to too much details there, but yeah, like, again, comparisons. Jest is like JUnit or NUnit or RSpec, etc. So let's call this React testing library. Oh, that really annoys me that it does this.
Every tool does that.
Yeah, and it annoys me. Okay, cool. Right, so let's set up Jest to watch that file. So tests React.
So what does watch do, Mark?
So if I'd have just done Jest React testing library test, just run it once, give me that error that we can see here, and then stop. But by setting watch, it's going to listen to the changes I make to the file, and it's going to rerun it every time. So for example, we can see here it's saying your test failed to run. So if I do test trialing.
Oh, the pressure of typing while
I
people watch. Just
know,
give up, Mark. Just bash the keys. Just
testing library.
and I can just click away just to annoy you.
Just to distract me. Cool. So if we go back, cool. So it's passing, but there's obviously nothing in there. So yeah. So as I make edits, I can view things there. So it's actually, I could do something like this, which actually might be a nice way so we can see the changes as they progress.
Okay, so we need to pick. I'm guessing. I think you mentioned they were called components. So I know a little bit about React, and as far as I'm aware, any React front end is made up of one-to-many components.
Yep.
Therefore, you mentioned React being testable. It's because we can test these components in isolation.
Yep.
To the rest of the website.
Yep. So they all exist underneath this components folder here, and have relationships with each other. It's a bit of a disorganized mess. again, like I'm not very good with Webpack, so I'd love to know how to be able to create like subfolders and put components into subfolders to sort of kind of organize them all. But yeah, so what I was thinking was maybe we could do the login component to begin with, because that just renders as basically a login form. It's got some other bits and pieces and stuff, but that could be a good place to start.
Okay.
So let's import login from source JS components login.jsx. Cool. So that's the component that we're going to test in.
Some quick questions from me. We're obviously using, well, I say obviously, this is VS Code.
Mm-hmm.
That little fancy IntelliSense you got then, is that default or have you
That's
installed?
default. That's
That's
default.
default.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, which is pretty handy. I've not actually done much in the way of I'll leave that for now.
So I think that extend expect is the thing at the bottom.
Yeah, but I'm
Because
gonna
he says there it's for the matches. So I think it's these to match maybe snapshots.
yes, I think you're right. Yeah, so if we pull that in, we could hopefully use this.
And I assume that that's been pulled in
Oh, no.
by the installing of React testing library.
Sorry, what I drifted there for a second. What did you ask?
Because again, this is just me reading JavaScript. This import those 4 functions from testing library, which is what we installed.
Mm-hmm.
But this extend expect, where's that coming from?
That's why I drifted off, because I'm not quite sure actually where that is and how that puts that in.
Okay. Well, we'll find out if we try and run it, won't we?
Yep. Right. So we're going to do absolute basic. Like we're not going to do much with this. I'm just going to go. So I'm going to never underestimate the power of copying stuff from other people's examples and having a bit of fun. So let me get this up and running. Import login from. Oh, what? Oh, okay. Oh, so this is giving me an error. All right, let's comment that out for now. So this,
Yeah, so I'm not sure we have that. I think we need to get that from somewhere.
yeah, we'll have a look, see how we get on. Okay, so I think that worked. I think that was it. So if I just clear these bits out, because we're not using them at the moment. But, all right, so we've used to match snapshot. So rather than doing like an actual assertion on some data, excuse me, what I've done
It does
is,
say it in the README, Mark. I've read the README. It says you may also be interested in installing Jest DOM, so you can use the custom Jest matches.
oh, okay.
So yeah, just here.
Maybe it's these two have been called times. Let's have a look.
Okay.
Let's have a look. Yes, there you go.
Okay.
Those custom matches.
But do we have Jest DOM
not
installed in our project yet?
no, we don't. No. So let's well, let's come back to that, because I think we'll need something to actually well, yeah, no, let's give that a crack then. So yeah, so we'll install this. Oops, so we'll quit this.
For my own memory, the --save -dev. What's the specifics about that? What does it do?
That saves it directly into your package JSON, so you don't have to manually add it in. And you can have dev dependencies and you can have dependencies. And the idea is that, say, if you were installing in production some sort of JavaScript or Node app, in production you would just call dependencies. So those are the dependencies to make production work, whereas dev are like to get it working dev and stuff. So, or at least that's my interpretation of this. So
Makes sense.
yes, cool. So that's that set up. So let's get watching that test again. Yeah, so as I was saying, this expect here, what it's doing is, I believe, container first child. What that's doing is getting, hey, that passed.
It's
So that's,
happy now.
yeah, that worked. Awesome.
I
So
contributed. I
well
contributed.
done, well done. You can pat yourself on the back.
I literally just wrote some JavaScript. Can't be prouder.
I think that's it. That's your quota for the year done, isn't it? Yeah, so the container.firstChild, I think what that's doing is just extracting a bunch of HTML out, and then we're saying to match snapshots. So I think we're taking that HTML or like whatever that output is from first child, and it's dumping it into this snapshots file here. So we can so the reason why I knew it passed is because I could see, obviously it's a one passed here, but I saw the snapshots folder go green because I can see like Git has noticed that there's a new file to add. So in here, this is the HTML that would be created by the React component.
Yeah, so if you open that React component, we could literally see a Reacty version of that, right?
Yep. So a good example would be is if, say, for example, I change this class and called it Bradshaw.
I call everything Dave. There's so many projects out there with variables called Dave by me.
I once made them. I used to do that, but I used to do that with the name Steve, and I was once with a group of people who I didn't really know very well, and so this entertainer was making a joke, and he said, like, he was doing a riddle, and he was like, "What would you call a blind cow?" And I said Steve, and the guy sitting next to me who was called Steve was not happy with me.
So we can see that failed though. And it, like you said, it's failed because you've literally changed the production code. The actual app under test has been changed.
Yep.
You changed it there. And when you ran this test the first time, it created a snapshot, which is basically like it's kind of like an assert, right? There was talk about this on Twitter the other day. I think Angie Jones wrote something about snapshots, but it's basically taken the output of calling that component and saved it in a text file.
Yeah.
And now every time you run it, it's comparing text for text and showing you where there's the difference.
Yep. So reverting it back, they like the outputs match, so they compare. It's worth saying though that this isn't this. I don't think that this is React testing library. This is Jest.
No. Yeah.
Because I've used expect to match snapshot before. So I think we should do something a bit more
fancy
pantsy. And I think maybe it'd be something you might want to lead with. I'm thinking, for example,
let me open up automation and testing.online and open the page that we're looking at.
So the hotel contact form might be a good idea. So,
or do you not want to do some more with? Do you want to finish that one with?
Well, it is finished because there's not really. Oops.
True.
Oh, hang on. I need to turn that off. Started hearing my own voice. Contrary to popular belief, that's not something I want to hear. Yeah.
So you're saying we want something with more complexity where we can trigger an action.
Yeah. So, I suppose with the login form, we could go down the route of creating a mock and then interacting with login to see that it sends. So so the options are we could extend this or we could play with the contact form.
Go for the contact form. I think we need to do something that triggers behavior, which
let's do that.
Actually.
Yeah, let's do that. Although,
curious, right? Because I'm looking at React testing library, the example, and obviously a snapshot is quite, doing the whole thing is what you need. But it seems like you said the get by test ID seems to be the bit that the library is built. Maybe I don't
Yes.
quite.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't see how that references to the fetcher. But then I wonder if maybe because we're actually no. Oh no, it's here. Get by test IDs here. So I guess the render is being tied to a bunch of different things. Like these methods mean something different. Yeah.
Seems we need to do some reading.
Yes.
A highly important part of any learning a new tool.
Docs.
Local component state. Interesting. So there's actually another website we can click on that I've just got through to. So if you go to examples on the GitHub repo again.
Yep.
Um,
Bear me a second. Docs are pretty decent. They look pretty robust as well.
yeah, I think that's the only bit I'm struggling with is to understand which bits React testing library, but I think that's because we already have experience of using Jest.
Yeah, I would say these bits that I've highlighted here, they are the.
And this after each, I imagine, is part of it, maybe. And
Uh,
obviously, the word test,
that's Jest.
even with the fancy name and.
Yeah, that's all Jest because, and it
Okay.
makes it quite clear in the docs that it's not a test runner or framework, and actually
Yeah.
can work without Jest. So essentially, what this is so traditionally I've used Enzyme.
Yep.
But this is this is different to this is an alternative to Enzyme.
Oh, right. I see. Okay. So I think we've used JS DOM in the past as well, which.
Yeah, so Enzyme is something
Which
that
is
sits on
kind of
top of JS DOM. Yeah, so I would imagine this probably does something similar. Let's have a look at the package file.
Okay, it's starting to become a bit clearer. It's only taken 25 minutes, but
Yeah. That's the magic of JavaScript. It works you hard, but then when you get it, oh, it's glorious. What the hell happened there?
never got
Okay.
it.
So I guess so it's not totally clear to me like how how assigning these different things to render like how that kind of works, but I think maybe we're just like that's maybe trying to get too much into the guts of it, because what it's clear to me is like get by text, you can assign it to the render and then you can call get by text to get something.
Yep. So yeah, it gives you those functions that
Yeah,
don't exist without using the library.
yeah.
All
So
right, let's do that then.
I mean, we could try the let's stick with
At least let's get it working like this get by test ID.
yeah, get by test ID, and then if we go down to the admin panel, we can get the ID here. Inspect
So I've got
this.
that open. Yeah, username and password, I think they are.
Yep.
And that's what I'm assuming it means the actual ID, not a property called test ID, which I know a lot of people have started adding.
Well, there is fortunately a cheat sheet.
Ooh, cheat sheet.
Ah, yes.
It is.
Find by test ID.
So we don't have any of them, Mark.
We do not.
Quick, go and add some. Right. In a normal situation, like on a serious note, I think there is a move away from using IDs in some of these tools now. because obviously IDs also have a lot of logic in some apps. So things like anchors in pages use IDs. So I imagine a lot of tools will probably start to move away to
Sorry.
that. Hang on, I
Fantastic.
want to see what has Kent said to that issue. Like that's awesome. Oh, it's not opening. Oh, I didn't click it. That's why. Click it. I want to see if this got closed as one fix.
That's it's very polite.
It is, yeah.
Polite, but no.
All right, okay, right. So let's do that then. Let's go and add some IDs.
Okay.
Because on a serious note, like I think React makes it quite friendly for people to actually go and add things like IDs into code. Because obviously there's a component file for each thing. There isn't, some big engine somewhere generating loads of HTML. So it is just a case of finding the right property and adding that in.
Yep. So let's give that a crack here. So data test ID equals username and data test ID equals password. Cool. That's actually going to cause this to fail because I've added new attributes in. So if a snapshot changes but I actually want to accept the changes, I can hit U and it updates and passes the test. So it says it's updated.
Nice.
Nice. Right. So we were saying we were going to do get by test ID username. So it's not thrown. I wonder what happens if I just do that. Yeah, so that fails. Unable to find an element.
Cool.
That's quite nice. I like that. It feels one of the
feels familiar is the thing.
yeah, it feels familiar.
Right.
I mean, like again, joking aside, I do love working with JavaScript, but I do sometimes wonder. Like, I can see a necessity of this tool for unit testing React components, but like when you're doing sort of quite large functional end-to-end tests in JavaScript, I do find that you're fighting against the nature of JavaScript because it's non-blocking and designed to be as asynchronous as possible. That you're constantly fighting against that. Whereas like other more like traditional tools like Java or C Sharp, because they are blocking, that's the flow that you want to go through. But this doesn't feel like that. I don't feel like I'm fighting against it, which I like. So that just gets the ID. So I guess we need to.
So it gets an element, I assume,
Yeah.
of some sort of object, and we must be able to then do things with it.
Yeah, we must have to fire.
So that bottom example, I think, had this one down here. This to have text. So this to have text content. There must be a list of these somewhere.
Yeah. So what should we do?
Maybe?
Should we like say expect get by test ID and then say like see if we can have see if we can see if it's got like a cert on its label or something like that, or do we want to interact with it?
Why don't we keep it simple and add an ID to the login to your account? Because the inputs don't have any text, do they?
No, they don't. Yeah.
So if we go back to your container and change login to your account to have some sort of test ID, wherever that text is stored.
Let me make this full screen for a second.
That H2 there.
Yeah. So data test ID login header. Cool.
And then we can do an assert on that, I guess.
Yeah. Do you want to give it a crack?
I think like
I'll let you try for a
I'll
second.
let you do it while I'm typing, while I talk. I think well, it's kind of interesting here that the library seems to exist like to do a few interactions with the page itself, with the actual component. Because obviously if you wanted to do static stuff, you're just going to use snapshot. I can't see any gain by using this if you're just going to do a whole snapshot of the page.
Yeah.
But it seems that it has been designed to do some clicking, because I think in some of our jest tests, we're actually using straight up JavaScript to do some clicks.
Yes, and actually at times I've struggled a little bit to interact with the object. And I think this is what what's mentioned in the documentation is I've actually used part of the implementation to trigger the test. So for example, I want to press a button and then that will send off a HTTP request, but I can't get it to push the button for some reason. So what I've done is I've cheated and just triggered the function that contains the HTTP request in it. Whereas this feels like it's going to be a bit better with that. So we need to put the expect in there as well.
Oh, at the start.
Yeah.
And then it's going to end here.
Mm-hmm.
Always got to count your brackets in the JavaScript world. And then log in, I think, to your account, it should say. Log into your account.
So if I just quickly get this up.
Oh, it's not changed to username yet.
Yeah.
So what was it called? Login header, was it?
Yeah, dash header. Oh, yeah, so it passed. The snapshot failed. So if you were to comment, if you comment line 19 out for a second.
I'm trying. I can't scroll across this page. So
Tom.
It seems scroll isn't something that works on this tool.
Command / will comment the line out.
Oh no, I meant as in I was trying to scroll across so I can see the start of the line.
Yeah.
But this remote pairing tool doesn't accept my magic mouse finger swiping. So drag that over. Cool. All right, yeah. So now we've literally have taken advantage of the library to, get a specific element and to read its text, which under the hood would obviously be, a JavaScript straight up function, but this is nice and easier to read, and a bit more friendly on the eye.
Yeah. So I guess the next thing I'd be interested in is, so I don't know if this breaks the guiding principle actually, but whether or not I could read something from the state. So when you fill this form in, it updates.
Why do you think it would break the guiding principle?
Because I'm accessing the internal state of a component, which is not something the software wouldn't work that way. So the more your tests resemble the way your software is used, I think if you were following that principle, what I would have to do is to ensure that the correct data was put into the state. Then what I would have to do is click the send button and have a mock that would receive that HTTP request.
Okay.
But I think what we could do is we could just simulate a click and see what happens. Because I think it's going to send the HTTP request, so we might see like an error or something like that. So if we do login, did you want to still drive, by the way?
No, because I'm not sure what you're up to, so I'll watch for a second.
Okay, sure. So I'm going to put data test ID into the button. So submit. And then looking at what happens here is there's a fire event dot click, then get by something or other. So I could do. So
that get by text is interesting. Is that the text that's in the link, do you think, or is that the actual text of the link on the page?
It's the text content. So yeah, I think it's what exists inside it.
Okay. So yeah, it'll be what's actually rendered on the page. Yeah. So their test app must have a button that is, literally says on the screen / whatever greeting. It was. I can't remember. Yeah, load greeting /I.
Ah, that's a regex, I believe.
Oh.
Yeah, that's why there's the I.
Bloody hell, regexes. What's the world doing to me? JavaScript and regexes in one video.
It's a baptism
And
of...
I've run out of beer as well. Oh, all the pain.
Okay, let's see what happens. There you go. So those errors that you can see down here,
Yep.
it's because it's going, hang on, you've tried to call them, like you're trying to make an HTTP request, but it's not doing anything.
Because there's nothing running.
Yeah. Now I think so. We could cheat a little bit here and actually copy some information. Like we can copy some stuff from a previous test. If I just remember.
That was my little dog. Found the squeaky ball. Gonna take that off him for the next 20 minutes. We'll play after Ralph, okay? In 20 minutes, we'll play. Promise.
Okay. So
this is what you've just copied there. So now you've obviously gone with knock.
yeah,
And I think in Kent's example, it was
Axios.
Axios.
Yeah. So that's maybe something to have a look at in a future session. But the principles are pretty similar.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious. I might ping him a quick tweet and see if there's any reason why he favors Axios over knock.
Yeah. So whilst you're doing that, I'll do the... Oh, what's it trying to call again? Auth login. So to begin with, I'm just going to do that. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Done is not defined. So let's put done up here. And then we'll say let auth mock. And then again, just for the sake of cheats, let's say expect
What are you thinking, Mark? You're very quiet.
I am very quiet. I think I've probably got a problem here with, like, I think probably the test is so that the request is not processing quick enough.
So let's talk that through. So you've created a mock at the top using knock.
Yep.
You're loading your login component. You're clicking submit.
Yep.
And you believe that your mock isn't responding quick enough.
Maybe, or it may be actually that.
You've got
yes. But it's saying it's passed because the expect is saying is true. And maybe that actually this is not quite right. So if we do something very hacky here and we say console log, I was called. See what happens. Okay, so it is saying it's called. So this is something. So this is why Axios actually interests me, because this is a challenge that I've had with knock at times. Is that I get it passing, but then I get these.
Let's try it. Perhaps that is the reason why he uses it.
Yeah.
Let's stick Axios in there.
Although actually no, I don't think it's the mock. I don't think it's knock that's failing. It's actually the code, like the production code's failing because it's saying. So it's saying unexpected end of JSON input. So that says to me that actually it's made the request and it's failed. Attempted to flog failed to authenticate.
Is that because you're not returning any JSON in your mock?
Yeah, so I need to remember what it is exactly that gets sent back. So
username, password.
Let's go into the network tools. So we're using DevTools again here, which we covered in our previous stream. Persist the logs, so it's worth checking that.
Firefox dev tools this time, though.
Yeah, baby. Forbidden. Admin password. There we
Very secure website, by the way, if this is the first time watching.
go.
We care a lot about security over at
Yeah, we do.
Winteringham.
Okay, so what I could do is knock. I think knock. Let's go to knock JS. So,
I know you're not a football fan, Mark, but the England Lionesses are winning 3-0 right now.
good
Absolutely
for them.
on fire.
Good for them. Okay,
They're
cool.
doing pretty damn good.
So, oops, no, I think we put it here. So we do this.
I think you put it in. Yeah, that's. Don't know why I know where that's where it goes. You got it's not a function.
Yeah, but it kind of makes sense, really, because so we've got a different failure, but it kind of makes sense because you're saying this is the response code, this is the body, and this is what to do once you're done. So
what's the error we have now?
it's saying that that the mock, so basically the test is timing out. But you can, so this, I think this is more, this isn't an issue with the test tools. This is more about the testability of the application. The fact is that the component doesn't really handle failed logins very well.
Right.
So I think that's probably got something to do with it. But it's sending the correct response back. But yeah, I'm curious. I'm not quite sure why it's.
Why can't we get this to pass? That's what I want to know. You got a mock. It's returning a token. You click in. Obviously, no. Actually, you shouldn't get a token because you've not filled in the form.
Well, so what I've done with the knock is with the mock is I've just said
it's going to call it anyway.
Yeah, as long as you're calling login. So if I change this to login A.
Yeah, and there's no validation either on the front end. So.
Yeah. So it fails. It says it's false. So that's interesting because it is saying that it's done.
It is bizarrely slow.
Yeah.
It doesn't really. I don't understand. It doesn't really tell me why it's failing. That's the bit I don't.
Yeah.
Get. It says it's timing out, but I don't understand which bit's timing out.
I think maybe I'm doing this a little bit wrong. I think maybe that it's not because done's not being called. So I think maybe I've not got reply quite right yet.
That looked like you don't need results.
Oh, that's the object. That's just the object they send in.
Readmes, more readmes. How to use knock. You've scrolled past so many examples.
I have, but that's because this is what I was
looking for.
Expectations. So we can call is done. Oh, so I've obviously been using this slightly wrong for a while.
You've said so many times, you're going to have to tell me what's going on.
Okay, so what I always thought, so down here I'm calling auth mock is done, but I always thought that when calling is done had some relation to this anonymous function in here, but I don't think this does anything other than, like, once I've replied, call done here to finish the test. So if I remove this and I remove that, let's just check if that works. No. Yes. No.
Yes. No.
Oh yeah,
No,
yeah. So
yes.
all right, yeah. So it's passed. These failures you're getting us because it's trying to change itself into something else. So like cannot read property cookie of null is because it's trying to set a cookie, but I haven't
Because you told
mocked.
it was a 200.
Yeah, yeah. So
So it's trying to set a cookie, but it can't because of what?
because I think that I need to like either mock the cookie process or something like that. So if we go to so saying it's at line
Because
79.
JS doesn't accept cookies. You
It could
can't.
be, yeah, I'm not quite sure. Log in line 79. No, it's not there.
Impossible to set cookies on runtime is the first result I get.
78, 79. Line 66. I don't really know why it's pointing at that piece of HTML though. But essentially, yeah, so what's happening here is, okay, so I can get rid of one of these. One of these errors is this set authenticate method. So this is a prop that I'm sending to the function. So in React, you can send, like, say, like you create a function in a parent component, you can send it to a child component so that the child component can call it. So if I do set authenticate equals, is it equals? Yeah.
Equals what?
I can't. It's been a little while since I've used it. So what's the syntax again? Admin container uses login. So yep, there you go. Equals an object. Inside that object is just an empty function that doesn't do anything. Cool. So attempted to log, failed to authenticate. So it's the catch. So these errors that we're seeing are coming from the catch. So it's trying
So
to,
your own code's failing. The
yeah. So again,
actual.
this is the testability thing, is that I'm catching this and logging this out. I wonder if I deleted that. Yeah, so it passes,
Oh,
but
that's all I wanted. That's just what I wanted, man.
yeah,
It's
but then
just
you do get all these errors below here where basically it's, so what's happened is that, so again, this is the issue here, is the testability of the component, is that there is unresolved things going on in the component after the test is completed.
right.
So I probably have to make some changes to this to make sure that either I wait for it to do what it needs to do, or for example, like you say, with new, because it's creating a cookie, it's able to create a cookie correctly or something like that. But yeah, it passed. It was passing before. It's just the errors that were coming out. So you can see up here it's saying it was passed. These errors that were being logged out are basically just saying, "Oh, you can't. You're not. You shouldn't." It's an anti-pattern to have things logging out after your test is complete. But going back to
Yeah.
to
Okay.
React testing library, so we could extend this a little bit further. So we could say we expect username admin and password. Okay, so this is failing now because the mock doesn't match, because I'm saying you need to send an object with a username of admin and a password of password. So now we need to go back.
Yeah. So
So
you're saying if this mock gets hit, it will only now reply with admin and password, and we're not sending that.
yeah,
Therefore, it's failing. So we need to fill in those fields.
yep. So now we need to look at how we can do send keys. So send keys.
I think they're all under events, aren't they?
Yeah, firing events.
Change click key down looks possible. Oh no, that's for an enter key.
Yeah, I think it's this one here. Oh, no, target. When an event is dispatched on an element, the event has subjected element on a property called target. It's convenience. Yeah.
Seems like a very WebDriver-y thing to do.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, this makes sense to me. So fire event change. So yeah, you're triggering a change to, because like React, you can have I believe it's controlled elements or controlled something around that. But basically, the idea is that um, so say like an input field can be typed into. When you type a letter into the input field, React is waiting for a change event. So it's going, oh, something's changed. You've sent me an additional letter. So what it does is it goes, what do I do with that letter? You can tell it to go and add that to its internal state. And then to close the loop, the value of that input field is always the internal state. So you press a key, it wakes up a function that adds that letter to the internal state, which then in turn updates the view that you can see, kind of redraws the element, but with that letter in it. But it happens so quickly you don't see that.
Okay.
So the idea being is then if you want to do something with that form field, you can just click a button and then send the state off, and you don't have to do like extractions from fields and stuff like that. You don't have to do HTML lookup. So I think that's kind of what's going on here, I
So this
believe.
is like I imagine, yeah, this is the proper trigger to cause React to do what it does, because I've seen a lot of issues with people trying to use Selenium and they fill in fields but nothing happens.
Yeah.
And it's because there isn't an actual, the trigger hasn't been met, which is this key down thing, I assume.
Yes. Yeah, I believe so. I've tried to do like little JavaScript apps, little JavaScript scriptlets in a React page where I can fill the fields in, where I just do get element by ID and I fill it in. And what that does is that fills the HTML, like that fills the value. It updates the value in the input of the field. It updates the value of the input field, but it's not changed the internal state because it's not done the right triggering. So that when you click the submit button, you get like an error saying I don't recognize that.
Okay.
So let's copy this because copying and pasting is for the win. And we can say admin. That's username. And then password is password. And that did not work. So let's see if we just remove this to make sure. I think the syntax is wrong. Is the syntax wrong? No, that's right. So let's see if we just call that. Does that work? Yeah. So it is finding the element. I think we're not sending the value correctly.
Go back to the help guide. No, it's not right. You're missing a comma and closing out after the get by label text. You're missing a bracket. So this needs can't find my mouse. This needs closing out there.
Aha,
curly
yes.
bracket.
Yeah. And then
more JavaScript for Richard.
Oh. When are you going to start your consultancy?
It's already live. Just wrote the whole thing in React. And
hey, that worked.
It did work.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Okay.
So
and this is interesting because I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but a lot of people do these kind of tests with a full-blown browser tool. Whereas this is actually triggering the functionality of filling in the field and clicking login.
Yeah.
But you don't need a full-blown browser, because obviously when you're trying to do it in a full-on browser, you're probably more interested in its look and feel, which, obviously you're going to need a different set of tools to do that.
Yeah. So we did the
And you don't
snapshot.
like the cost of spinning up a browser to do a simple test like this, it's madness.
Yeah.
When you can do it in 3 lines of React in JavaScript, if your testability, if your app's written in React, it affords you this level of testability.
Yeah. Yeah, and then if I was still concerned with making sure that the real API consumes requests properly, I'd do an API test for that, and then what I'd do is I'd have another test that is full stack to make sure that the UI can talk to that auth API. But by that point, that final test is predicated on the fact that all these other tests have passed before that. So we trust that these two different areas are behaving themselves, and it's actually just that final making sure that the pieces of the puzzle connect.
Interesting.
Cool. So
I kind of ran out of time.
yeah. But I really like this. I really like this.
Tell me why you really like it.
I think the reason why I like it is that first of all, like just looking at the code that I've got there, it's much cleaner than say if let's find an example somewhere else, make everyone's eyes bleed. Hotel contact test. So this one is doing something similar. It's filling a form field in. It's supposed to be filling in a form and then pressing submit. But because I couldn't get the button to select, I've been actually updating the internal state of the component. And again, that seems to go against that guiding principle that sort of ties to this. So these two tests are doing very similar things. Now, admittedly, there's a few more fields here, but for this, I'm having to actually it's it here. I'm calling. So first of all, I have to call update. So I'm creating my component and then filling in some details into the component, like directly injecting that into the internal state. Then I have to call update. Then I have to call instance submit form, which is the actual JavaScript function rather than pressing the button. And then I do my assertions after that.
So you're heavily relying on the internals of React.
Yes, because I've struggled to be able to interact with the elements because it just I don't want to badmouth Enzyme because Enzyme's been I found it really useful, but I have struggled to sort of when I want to do things to an element, that becomes a bit trickier. So this is just initially it's now that I've sort of got the hang of how you attach these functions to the render. How that works, I don't know, but I feel like I don't need to know.
Magic.
Yeah, it's just magic. At some point, you hit a wall with JavaScript. You have to just accept it's magic. But like knowing that the things like if I want to do get test by ID or if I want to do something like container, I just drop those into this sort of group of things that get assigned to the rendered React component. And then after that, it's actually quite clean. And like I said, it feels familiar as well. It feels familiar to other testing libraries as well.
Fire event is an interesting use of words as well.
But fire event makes sense in this context because that's what it's all about. Event. Oh, okay, cool.
No, I was saying it makes it very clear because obviously when a lot of people will be familiar with submit, send keys, submitting, and so forth. But actually, as you said, it makes sense in the world of JavaScript.
Yeah.
Because everything's event-based, right? The events are firing all the time. And therefore, you want to fire an event. It makes absolute sense.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Cool. Well, I guess a thumbs up from me, which means nothing. But that was pretty cool. And I enjoyed that.
Yeah, me too. So I'm gonna just go out on a whim here and say that I reckon you'll see some React testing library examples in the RESTful Booker project pretty soon.
Mm-hmm.
I think Mark likes it, so there'll hopefully be some examples there soon. Apart from that, though, obviously, if you're in a React context, I think based on this hour of investigation, I would check it out. It seems pretty useful. It makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, yeah, it's a nice clean thing to use.
The documentation was good. There was good examples.
Yeah,
Obviously, we spent a bit of time messing around with Knock, and maybe if we had more time, we could check out Axios. But obviously, it does seem that you need some sort of mock to make this work, which kind of makes sense because you don't want to spin up your real API. And obviously, most React applications are calling some sort of API. So obviously, you need to get familiar with a mocking tool. And then, yeah, there seems to be a few more things we'd need to play with, like this cleanup function that Mark's having a quick stab at. You reckon that's going to clean up your previous errors?
we shall see. I've just renamed the file to login test because I think actually I'm going to keep it as a proper test. No, it doesn't clear those outputs and stuff, but the test still passes.
Yeah.
From the looks of it, yeah, it does.
So yeah, we should go. So we will add this video to YouTube, and I believe it stays on Twitch for like 30 days or something like that, if I'm not mistaken.
It does.
We will do another one of these in a couple of weeks. If there is a tool that you want us to play around with, ping us, let us know. And also, if you've got a commercial tool and you want us to play around with that, get in touch. Maybe we can do something around exploring your tool as well. But either way, we're open for new tools. We've got a list of ones that we want to play with, but at the same time, you might know a tool that we don't.
Yeah.
So let us know.
Yeah. Give us more toys to play with.
But yeah, this is literally us. We've been doing this for years, like just tinkering with tools on our own. But yeah, this is now us, just bringing it to you as well and showing you how we go about doing things. So hopefully with some insight into that about how we solve problems. And obviously there's a working solution at the end of it. All right, I think we're done.
Yep, I'm going to push this up into the code base and we'll call it a night.
Yeah, cheers, Matt. I'm going to go play with Ralph because he's still squeaking that ball. So, all right, speak to you soon. See you later, everyone. Bye.
Bye.